Buildings behind me were the headquarters for the World War II Office of Strategic Service. It was here that the first halting steps toward mind control began.
So 10 years before Stanley Kubrick made The Shining, he made another film. It was a film about mind control called A Clockwork Orange.
The Shining is one movie that has really been put through the ringer, and one thing that people really don't notice, that doesn't really make a lot of sense.
All during the shoot, Kubrick is rewriting the movie.
What we see here is Stanley Kubrick trying to encode a secret meaning into The Shining that he doesn't want anyone to know about.
Kubrick has several references to Freemasonry in his films.
There's a lady that walks past that has a bloody handprint on her ass.
The Shining is Kubrick's 11th film, and there's 11s all through the film. 11 is a special number in occult theology.
The Shining has been regarded as one of the greatest horror films ever made. But is it really a horror film?
The Shining also is loaded with sexual innuendo.
The family is isolated up at the Overlook, which is a perfect opportunity for some sort of CIA experimentation to go down up there.
Using MK Ultra methods, psychiatrically control assassins. Literally assassins.
Experimental drugs, including LSD, were administered to human guinea pigs. The patients were never told that their treatment was part of a CIA experiment.
And there is this story which involves him spiking the drinks of one of his deputies, this guy Frank Olson, and he jumped out of a window to his death.
It's a demonic possession, you know, so it makes someone feel like they don't have any control over this etherical entity outside themselves, when really it's the people who are imposing the trauma that need to be held accountable for the actions.
Mr. Thomas.
We know what happened in the apartment that they had.
There are many clues that point to the fact that this theory of what The Shining is really about is the correct theory.
We think that we're watching a horror movie where ghosts are kind of forcing a man to go off and kill his family, but what are we really watching here?
Welcome to the Hotel California.
Wendy, I'm home.
Welcome back to Raised by Giants live discussion. Good to see everyone. It's been a minute. Glad to see everyone in the chat, any moderators and or channel members out there today. I got a new setup here behind me. New place, new setup, new me, baby. You know how we do. A lot of people have been asking when the documentary A Clockwork Shining drops. That's the most emails that I've gotten here lately. It'll be soon. It'll be before the end of the month. And I'll be dropping a new trailer when it gets released on Amazon Prime Video. Thank you guys for being patient with me, not doing any shows as of late. I've been super busy relocating. As you can see, the background and everything behind me is different, but we're back up and running. And we have an amazing show here for you guys here today with David DuByne from Adapt 2030 channel. How's it going, David? It's good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on. And that was a really interesting intro there, because if you're thinking about the Earth's magnetic field changing, how could governments do that to an entire planet without the drug, knowing that the magnetic field changed and the impetus or stimulus into that could also cause behavioral changes as well? If you knew the cycle was repeating, and if you knew when it was going to amplify it, if you know the real numbers of Earth's magnetic field declining, which they have taken Swarm off of line, was at 2016, then you could really start to go to bat here and maybe amplify some sort of emotional output, knowing that differences of solar output onto humanity, like this meat suit decoding the world in front of us, would change its decode algorithm so you would see something different in front of you. Now, right on top of that is a natural cycle. And how could you bend it beyond the experiment in the laboratory to a global field of play.
Well, not only that as well, I've discovered through doing research on this documentary and watching a lot of footage and getting a bunch of B-roll footage is that the first manufacturer and distributor of LSD in the United States was Eli Lilly and Company. And also Eli Lilly and Company was the first manufacturer and distributor of Prozac, the antidepressant. So they did, from what I've researched, they've just taken out all of the good consciousness expanding things from LSD or psilocybin, and they've dumbed all that down. And then they push out this antidepressant medication onto the public and get everybody on that. And that definitely has something to do with it for sure.
Yeah, because I've seen a fair few MDMA experiments too in South Africa that showed remarkable results with marriage therapy and couples counseling. And for some reason, that harmonious, in tune back with another human being vibration that medicine brings is not allowed on this planet. It seems like they only want chaos, violence, anger, division, and that's kind of where we sit. So you can see kind of this invasive hominid species, what kind of environment they want us trapped in or kept in. And there's got to be a way so we can find the key to our own door and unlock and walk outside and say, I no longer accept this.
I agree, absolutely. And, speaking of dividing, there's a lot of things that are going on at the moment. Before we get started, before we dive too deep into things, I want to play a clip really quickly from, do you remember my 200th episode show that me and you were in? It was with Jay Widener, Wayne Steiger, and Penny Kelly. You remember that 200th?
I absolutely remember that. I still talk to Penny pretty regular, and we're going to be doing a show here later on this month.
Well, here is a clip from that show, and this was over a year ago that we did this show, and this is going to set us up for our conversation here today. Do you think that we have to worry about natural disasters or manufactured natural disasters? Because we know that they have the ability to create storms. They can pretty much control the weather however they want. Dave, do you think that we have to worry about that at any point toward the end of this year?
Most technologies could be used to amplify events in case the human domain gets out of control. And when I say that, there's cause, react, solution, effect. If the human does not obey and the directive of where it's supposed to be pushed with the stimulus, if humanity wakes up for a better point and starts to go the other direction, like, whoa, uncontrollable thought, that amplification in extremes in whatever it would be, forest fires, volcanic eruption, twisting of weather in the jet streams and cloud cells, in addition to the moisture that's in the atmosphere and where everything's already cavitating and tweaking along 20 south and 20 north anyway. I think there'll be that blend. If humanity can't be controlled, it'll be put through extremes to get people to stop thinking about and fear for their lives. And then, you're going to swing the pendulum this way to survival, and then they'll pull you back in the middle of the narrative. I keep seeing this again and again. When humanity starts to think for itself, something other much larger rolls in on top to deflect or distract is a better way, I guess.
What do you think of that, Dave? Over a year ago, I was talking about this.
Yeah, and we're at this point now that we're at the juncture of this second magnetic field really is starting to intensify right now. So as we come into the end of the month, this is one that's going to get a little more hectic. And I do believe we're just at the cusp of the actual real changes that we're about to see. So if you look at where the four gas giants perceived from our Earth are in a square, the center of where the planet, our Earth, is going to roll through that. Also a gravitational body, electromagnetic field from the sun, Earth in the center, and those four gas giants in their square. It's an unknown how they're interlooping on themselves, how this will affect the planet here on an electromagnetic basis, not on a, space body, meteorite kind of basis getting tugged in with the equidistant Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, where nothing's pulling anything away from us, it's pulling it into us. So the beginning of the cycle, or the beginning of the event, occurs probably the 24th of this month. Remember, we're going to wind around, and then on December 6th, we're going to have something called the Galactic Cross, or I would call it more of a Shepherd's Cross. Maybe I misspoke on that, where it's Jupiter, Earth, Mercury, Sun in a perfect line, and then at the same time, Venus, Earth, and Mars in a perfect line, and making a cross on the exact same second and the exact same day on December 6th of this year, and right after this event. And then as we come spinning around in, let's say, March and April 11th will be exactly in front of the sun on the back side. Everything else in the entire solar system will be behind us. And I say with the equidistant squaring of the planets, it's almost like we're the very, very tip of an arrow. So I would anticipate an enormous amount of fireballs to come rolling through and space debris to get tugged right into the face of our planet. Now, if you look over the last couple months, as we were coming into this event, you could see the planet sort of squaring this way. And as we started to get a huge amount of fireballs coming from the side, not even directly into us. That was the tug from those gas giants gravitationally pulling that in. Now, when we swing around on the back, we are the only thing in the front of the solar system for about 4 months. And especially when we get into April, we're directly in front of the sun. Everything else is behind us, making this arrow shape. Now, put that into context. The reason I'm telling you these 3 events are going to go boom, 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 right in a row in like 6 months. If these do start to happen in unison, the amount of panic, or I wouldn't even say panic, it would just be like the realm of the unknown of the average person that doesn't understand solar activity or doesn't know anything about the solar system or is not looking at that. They're going to think it's the return. And imagine how you could capture attention and bend reality of the human on the planet if these natural events are happening. And you got daytime fireballs rolling in by the dozens every day, and people are seeing shock waves and hearing it and feeling it above their heads on a daily for 4 months. People are going to not go to work. You know, they're not going to be paying their taxes. They're not going to be obeying the rule of law. Have to be a lot of government intervention. And at the same time, like, how can you spin that for a certain demographic on the Christian side of things that think it might be the beginning of the return of a kind of the tribulation phase of things? Because food production is going to be knocked out at the knees. It already is. I mean, you have not seen anything yet with the food price rises. It's coming. Now, put it together, shake it up, don't stir it, and then pour it in. And then what do you think governments could do to try to manipulate humanity during this time of known inbound events? That's the whole thing. You need to know the events are inbound. Once you do, you can go, oh, cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect. How do we want to manipulate?
I really thought that the shoreman strike on the East Coast was going to last a little bit longer than a day, but that seems to be all that it lasted for, was a day, and then a deal was made. Which I thought was really interesting.
They saw the panic that it created, man. You had these huge lines all over in Costco again, like they did with the toilet paper shortage. So they knew that single event. Okay, they let it run to see what was the outcome. It was basically an experiment. How much panic could you push by throwing it in the news that there's going to be shortages of something? People's mind, when it goes to shortage, would they sign up for a digital rationing card at that point? If it did continue for, let's say, months or something, would people be willing to trade their sovereignty for a digital rationing card to put food in their bellies? That's the ultimate question, because this is where it's leading to.
I think that they would, because everyone is basically turned on what they said that they wouldn't do before. You know, it's turned into, oh, well, we'll just accept whatever because it's going to provide us safety. And that's a really big issue that I've seen coming for a really long time, is how flip-floppy people are on the things that they say that they're going to do. And then when it comes down to it, they don't end up doing it. It's really wild. Now, I thought that clip was really interesting that I just played, because I was talking about weather modification, and a lot of people have been talking about the hurricane that most recently hit North Carolina, and the Milton that hit Florida recently. You're kind of in that area around that area, what did you experience? Like, what did you see with these hurricanes?
Well, Helene was the one that hit up this direction, and I couldn't believe it. 20 miles from here, totally ruined. Right where we sit, we got a ton of rain, a lot of wind, but not nearly the damage or the flooding that they got literally 20 miles from here, or 30. I mean, it takes about an hour to drive up, but you're going up a snaky road, I mean, hairpin currents coming back in through the creek beds and things. But the damage was so incredibly devastating. I'm really shocked that there's not more coverage on it. I mean, it is so utterly world damage up in the North Carolina mountains, as well as in East Tennessee. I mean, just to put it in perspective, we had multiple 80-foot trees fall in the forest. They're all hardwoods as well, because the pines survived somehow. A bunch of the smaller pines fell down, but the largest of the pines stayed up. But then all of these really hardwood trees, we had a bunch of oak trees up there. They were good 80-foot tall, 70, 80 foot. They all just fell down in a row like matchsticks. It's going to take us years to clean that up. We're talking about gigantic trunks up there. And it fell down in this one area where it gets really deep, because we have a waterfall that's on the property, and it drops down in sort of like a mini Grand Canyon. If it was like a big gorge in there. But one of them did fall over, but I'd be kind of leery walking over it, because if you slip off, you're falling down 25 feet into like the rocks on the bottom where the creek is, but I mean, where it snapped, they all snap down into the, and you got to get down in there, cut that, and somehow get it back up or bring it out to the field by walking down the creek bed a couple hundred feet. Massive wind damage here, but nothing like 30 inches of rain coming down in just 6 or 7 hours up there. I mean, towns were literally scoured out of the mountains. There's nothing left. You can find maybe a foundation where there was something there, maybe. But the way that the river had changed so much course, there's no more. The roads, they have to really, and I no BS assessment here, they have to rebuild Western North Carolina from the ground up. The road beds are gone. Anything with sewage or water piping, it's gone. It got ripped out ferociously in torrents of water. If you look at anything electrical, I mean, so many poles were down. All the electrical infrastructure was ruined. There's 300 and some transmission stations that are gone or severely damaged to the point where they actually have to repair and replace it. The repair might not even be good enough, where they're going to have to replace all of it inside a substation somewhere. And then if you look at fiber optic cabling, they had dozens and dozens and dozens of mobile phone towers just washed away in flash floods, like just gone off the hills. You're going to have to rebuild that entire part of the state. And we're talking about half of North Carolina. Rebuild it literally from the foundation, from the roadbed up, to even put pavement back on it. It's gone. The entire river system and the entire creek system, everything changed in a second, and the amount of landslides. And it's just devastating. Like when I look at these pictures and all those people on the ham radio network asking for help and and then are being told that they can't go up and help because they're not registered with this organization, or they haven't done training from that organization, or their products are not from a preferred provider from this organization to be distributed in the hills. That you and me talking to somebody on the ham radio 6,000 feet up, we're at the bottom. We need help. We need formula. We need diapers. We need medicine. We need whatever, food, water. And me and Ryder are here and like, yeah, you know what? We got horses. We can get up there in probably about 3 to 4 hours. We know where the old logging roads are. And as soon as you leave from some of these towns where, personnel were stationed, they would say, no, you can't go any further. This road's blocked off. Okay, we're not going to go on the road, bro. We got horses. No, you can't go any further. Like, you literally can't go 1 inch past this line in 100 miles this way. You can't go past it up into the mountains. It's gone a huge amount of animosity. So people are and have been taking measures to move those blockades out of the way. And this is where they're like, well, you can't do that. We're authorities. And yeah, we can. We're the people. We got more authority than you because there's more of us and we know the terrain and you don't know anything and you're so slow. You're not doing anything except hindering rescue operations. So get out of the way. And that's truly the way it is. Like ham radio has been the preferred communication. Nothing else works. There's no communication. And that would be my main number one thing too. You got to have your food and water as like prep stores and thing. but you got to have a ham radio. That's the only thing that worked during and is still working during this emergency. But I realized a lot of people got their preps washed away, and that, you know, can't fault them for that. Your whole entire house just got washed away. In the middle of the river is now where your house was. Like, this is the kind of vast changes. These rivers have moved some 100 to 200, 300 feet in either direction and into neighborhoods and into communities in the middle. So a 50 or 100 foot wide river that was way over that way, 300 feet or 500 feet, and you're 500 or 1,000 feet away from the river, is now gone through the middle of the neighborhood and scoured it clean. Like, those people that were in their homes, they none of them made it. I mean, this is so, you have to look at the before and after pictures. There's this one website, Next Satellite, something. I'd have to get it to you, Ryder, so you can put it in the show notes. But they show all the before and afters of where the riverbeds were and where it was after. And every place there was homes before, they're completely scoured off the foundation. There's no foundation left. So the people that were in there trying to ride this out, and I watched a couple of videos as people got up there on Enduro 250s. They were able to get through, you know, some of the side, because they knew the old logging roads, right? These are kids that grew up there and hunted all over the place and knew every little trail. They took Enduro 250s way up in there. They beat all the first responders up there. So they were doing on the ground reports of, hey, what happened, this, that, and that. So the one woman was saying that all of her neighbors, because they had to get insurance, so you had to build above the 500-year flood line. So not on it, but above it. So almost all these families had built at the 500 and 1,000 foot flood level and above. And those houses were up to the chimney above or completely washed away off the foundations. And they were at the 1,000 foot or 500 foot level and above. So the house was above that. And then this is really like once in a more than a multi-thousand-year event of rainfall that came down. And those people really need help. So if you're listening to this message, please volunteer your time, your resources. These people really need help. They've been forgotten so quickly. And I really believe this is the first land grab on an Agenda 2030 basis, where they're going to say this is now deemed as a rewilding zone where nobody's allowed to move back in. It's going to cost trillions of dollars, trillions with a T, to rebuild that part of Western North Carolina. And the insurance companies will be bankrupted because of this event. So they're not going to pay out to rebuild up there. I would imagine, just like we're forecasting here, like we did in the last show, I'm going to make a bold call here. Not all, but several sectors of Western North Carolina will be deemed no human habitation zones. They will be rewilding zones. Just like you've seen these maps. There's these different maps that are kind of red and yellow, and you brought them up before, Ryder. The non-habitations of the areas humans can no longer go to. And I do believe this will be the first pincer into. And like you said, this is one of those, well, you ain't coming on my land, revenuer. And here they are giving up everything and just walking away. Yep. And this will be this. Now, can you imagine the coup that is done by going into one of those most strongholds of what you consider they ain't coming in here ever, and taking that as a rewilding zone because they flooded it out? And that would include East Tennessee also. There's some areas that just aren't coming back. So what was done there, if it was purposeful, hard to say. I don't believe they can steer hurricanes like they say they can. They can nudge them, maybe. They can drop carbon black and different kind of graphene on the top of the hurricane to cause high pressure and heating to steer it a little bit. But can they actually control it? That is a hugely different thing than manipulating it or managing it. But anyway, I went off topic there. My bad. I was going back with that.
Yeah, the wildlife thing is pretty interesting because that is something on the Agenda 2030.
Oh, we're there, man. We are absolutely, I kid, we are absolutely there. No kidding. We are there so hard right now, it'll make your head spin.
That makes a lot more sense than what I've been seeing a lot of people in the community talk about, that they manufactured this hurricane to wipe out Southern North Carolina to build smart cities. Like, they don't need to do that. Like, there's a smart city right now that's being built in Arizona without there being any kind of natural disaster. They don't need to destroy an entire sector of a state to build a smart city. They just tell people that they're going to build it. And that's another thing that people don't realize either, is like, it's very easy to get people to move out of their homes. It's very easy. And If they don't do it for money, then they'll force them to move. Once one person sells in a community of houses, they keep going. And if you deny them on the third time, then they're just going to come in and take it. So if they're going to do something like that, you just better just take the money and go someplace else, because they're just going to come in and take your land. They don't need to manufacture an event to wipe out these houses and get the land. They can just take the land. You don't even own the land, Dave. Nobody owns the land. You pay taxes on that land. Guess what? When you don't pay taxes on that land, it's no longer yours. It gets confiscated. Try not paying taxes on it. See what happens.
Unless you have it as an allodial title. That means freehold. You own it only. State has no right on it. They can't even put a lien on it. It's called allodial title, and I encourage everybody to look at it. It's not available in every state, but at least the research I've done, if you were given the land under a deed in the early 1800s or late 1700s on the land that you purchased, you can trace that deed all the way back to, say, 1798 or 1801 or 1803. Property I have on here, the original owners owned like 2,000 acres here, and that was bought or deeded, so they say, in 1802 here. So I've been trying to trace back all the titles that have been bought, sold to see if I can come back to the original deed and claim this piece of it off the original deed. But then come to find out, Tennessee doesn't allow you to do that. There are some states that do, but I'm just saying that as a side note, because you can allodial title your car too, where then you're only paying for the plates. You're not paying, because they charge you property tax in North Carolina on your car. So if you had a allodial title, they have no claim to your car anyway. They couldn't do a single thing to it. And this is something not well known. And if you purchase a brand new automobile, before they even title it, you go, that's got to be an allodial title. But you need to pay cash for it at that point. If you're going to put it on finance, the bank holds it. But once you transfer from the bank into your own, and they give you that, yellow card that comes with and says you own it freehold, you still don't own your car. If there's a bank bail-in, through the way the laws are right now, that will be confiscated as well. Maybe not confiscated immediately, but the value of your automobile will be bundled in those packages of, let's say, bailed in finance and sold off as a package, as an investment product to another investor. Now, when they buy it, they could possibly come in and go, we own all this land here. We own all the automobiles. You just bring your private army in and confiscate everything and bulldoze the houses, because we don't want to turn the tractors around here. We need to bulldoze every house so it's a big square, so we don't have to turn the tractors as much when we're farming the fields out here. This is what happens when they bail in. Now, allodial title allows you to get away from that. But I digress for a moment here. Chattanooga is a C40 city. So C40 is this group of mayors that have come to not so much create smart cities, but cities that are on the Agenda 2030 goal list that will absolutely hit those goals, where you'll have no meat, you'll have to get permission to travel, you'll have a certain amount of clothing you can buy per year, this sort of thing. Chattanooga is a C40 city, and you're going, not in Tennessee, not in East Tennessee, but here it is in East Tennessee. So all these things that people talk big bad game about, yeah, there's a few of those. I kid you not. When things are good, you go trespassing on somebody's property down here, you're going to have a very, very bad situation on your hands. If they don't release the dogs on you, if they come up to you, everybody's carrying up here. Nobody plays around. They don't want anybody on their land. And that's in good times. But like what happened in North Carolina, there's nothing left for people to have even claim on. I mean, their homes are gone, like literally gone down the river. Like everything you've ever prepared and owned in your whole life is a thing, from a t-shirt to your computer to whatever, metals you might have had in your house or any kind of storable food. Imagine your whole house picking up, washing away, and just churning into rubble in the river, and you have nothing left, literally nothing, zero. There's not even a foundation where your house used to be. And now your house that's the new middle of the river. This is what happened to thousands and tens of thousands of people. Now you go out and then you start to go, well, that's like 65, 70,000 people more, and this, And they haven't even gotten up to places because, you know, in the countryside, a lot of people, they just want to be left alone. So you don't even know who's really up. Because there's here where I live too, there's a couple neighbors across the street. I've never seen them once. There's a few other older people that live higher up that I've never seen them once either. Like if they disappeared, like in a flood like that, you would never even know they're gone. And those kind of things are still there, you know, and it's tragic what happened beyond, like, you wiped out part of 2 states and they're going to have to be rebuilt. And I just don't know if they're ever going to, I don't think they're going to be able to go back to their land. I don't. And again, you know, well, maybe here's the whole thing. I was trying to bring this up as I realized you were talking about, you know, paying property taxes. What made me realize you don't own a thing ever. Never.
Nope.
So when you think you might have this, and this, government could just come in and confiscate it and go, eminent domain. You know, they need this for those mines that are going up there. And I'm not saying they flooded it. Don't mix my words here. I'm not saying that they flooded a place to get some mining permits. I'm not saying that at all. But I am saying if your land happened to be on there and you're wiped out from the flood, the government's going to claim that land and go, well, we needed it for national security. Eminent domain. You own nothing. You own nothing. And get used to understanding that. That was my biggest takeaway from this emergency is you have no rights and you own nothing. And once you realize that, like the illusion is that you do. That's the biggest scam on the entire planet, is giving the illusion that you actually can hold something as ownership. You own nothing. Nothing.
That's right. That's right. No truer words have ever been spoken. And that's another thing that people have been pointing toward, these mining lithium and these crystal quartz. Well, when you do a little research, there are no active lithium mines in the United States besides in Nevada. That's the only place. There's one. There's one active lithium mining place, and that's in Nevada. They weren't even doing mining in North Carolina. The only thing that the quartz crystal one, that I'm pretty sure that one did get flooded, and another one got flooded. But the lithium mine that people are talking about isn't a lithium mine. It's a lithium processing plant. Where they bring in the lithium and then they process it from other countries. It's not a mine. I'm like,
no, I want to split a hair with you on that. If you go to the USGS, which is the U.S. Geological Survey, they do have the lithium deposit map of the United States, and the heaviest concentrations are in North Carolina. Now, another thing, when that same story I told you where the guys rode the Enduro 250s up there, that was right directly down from that quartz mine. And everything was sand beaches down the river, because they were saying that all the mining they'd done, once they did the separation and they took that host rock and whatever they did with it and turned it into that sort of smaller grain particle, that's what got washed down the river. And you got sand banks all across the rivers there, which it wasn't like that before. But they said everything got washed down from the mine up there. And the sand deposits, I mean, damn, you're talking 15, 20 miles of sand on both sides of the rivers that replaced the previous riverbanks. And I'm like, how big was that mining operation? Like, how much separation of host rock was there? And then what else got washed down there? I mean, I'm looking at that going, man, if anybody's into gold panning or gold mining and understands where those things, how they flow out, because these mountains have that fact for anybody. The earliest gold mining here was in East Tennessee before the 1849 gold rush. It was here in Tennessee. A place called Coker Creek. Takes a minute to get there. It's like really windy roads and you got to go down. But people got gold claims all over the place. And that was the very first gold rush was in East Tennessee, believe it or not. So, going into North Carolina, it's well known that there's a huge amount of gold deposits there. People always are, panning on the streams and thing. So I can't even imagine once in a 3,000, 5,000 year flood came down there, like what kind of gold got washed out of the mountains. There's going to be people panning all through there for years to come. Speaking of quartz, because quartz you can't have quartz without having gold deposit. They're symbiotic. They come together. People are always looking for quartz deposits to find the gold deposits. So you got the largest quartz and the purest quartz somewhere in the United States. What do you think is going to be on the periphery rock there, on the strata that's in there? There's going to be a huge amount of gold inside there as well. Like quartz deposits also equal gold finds and gold veins. Just saying.
It's just weird that they make it seem like that there were already active lithium mining operations going on in North Carolina when there isn't, and there hasn't been since 1988. Now, there are plans to do mining. I believe I read that it was around, they wanted to open up a 1,500 acre lithium mine by 2027. So
The deposits
the
are there, though.
only
I
thing
must
that they
admit.
have is a lithium processing plant that's currently there. That's the only thing. It's just processing the lithium. So other countries send in the lithium, we process it there, and then it goes out to be put in these electric vehicles and our cell phones and like in all of that. You know, the people are making it seem like that it's already been an active thing, that they have been mining lithium there for years and years and years, and they haven't.
Correct. But I'll say the deposits are there and the possibility to mine it exists. But if you look at there's a town called Spruce Pine, and that is where that quartz mine, it's the purest quartz on the planet so far that they found anywhere in the entire world. This has the purest quartz, and that's what they use for a lot of the semiconductor chips. So it's a main supply for most of the semiconductor chips that are being made and processed. So they start with that quartz first, then they, go through and they refine that down into those ingots that they pull. And, I've seen some ingot videos, and I didn't know much about semiconductor production, but the way they pull those ingots out so slowly over days and days and days, and they create those rods out of there of that purest of purest quartz. A lot of that originates from that same area around Spruce Pine. That is the name of the city or the town that no longer exists. It was completely wiped off the map. There might be a couple houses on stilts, but eminent domain will quickly remove that. And you know what? Going up in there, Army Corps engineers, they're not trying to help the people. They're trying to get that mine back open. So their number one priority is getting those roads built back up to Spruce Pine to get that flow of quartz back out for the global semiconductor chip supply. And those people there are like 2 valleys over that are starving and freezing now because it went below 0 Celsius, but below freezing temperature at 32 Fahrenheit over the last 2 nights. Forget them. We need to get the quartz mines open. We don't want to use those Hueys or those, any kind of transport to get up there. We need to bring rebuilding supplies in and make sure the mines are open. And this is what's really happening, where people are getting a little bit tired of it already, that you're bringing all that massive supply and that massive amount of construction materials, heavy moving equipment, surveyors and everything to get those roads rebuilt they don't exist anymore. So they have to, some of the areas that I've seen, the way the river had re-scoured in, they either have to go across the rivers and build bridges, or they have to blast the mountain to come out and create a roadbed in there. Right now, again, to rebuild it. And their entire focus is on rebuilding that road up to Spruce Pine because they need the quartz. And everybody else on both sides of the mountain, like you go over one mountain and one mountain, they need help and they're not getting it. And so people are like, whoa, this got to stop right now. And there's a lot of tension up there. A lot of tension. I mean, if something's going to flare off again, like it did in 1860, it's going to be there right now. This is such a powder keg. Like, nobody's talking about this on how the tension is between the federal side and the local people there. I mean, it is beyond ready to flare off up there. And the next person that says you can't go up and rescue your family, well, they cuffed that guy to the tree. They beat the other 2 FEMA officers and then, and just pushed them out of the way. The others got threatened down. And it's an ongoing thing. That's why they sent in all the 6,500 guard troops, because the citizens were standing up against the FEMA officials and actually threatening them, get off the road, or we're going to cuff you to the tree like we did your other guy, or put you in the hospital like the other 2 guys. The other guy wasn't beaten as bad, but the first guy got sent to the hospital. He was like a director trying to be all bad up near Asheville and like, you're not coming on this street. And they're like, yeah, we're going up there. That's my house. And it really got very tense, and it still is. You're not going to hear about this on the news. The tension is beyond what you could like cut with a knife up there. It is so standoffish right now. There's literally, I'm not even going to, try to get this broadcast in trouble, but let's just say people who live in the mountains versus those who don't, and those who don't are trying to stop the people from going up there and rescuing their families or getting back to their houses or salvaging anything from what used to be their lives. And it is getting to the point now where talking is no longer an option. And it's been time and time and time and time again, to the point where, they're starting to call in troops now to try to get some stability back in there. This is a PG version. I'm going to leave it PG for everybody.
What was FEMA's, because this was FEMA agents, correct? So what was their official excuse for not letting citizens back to their homes or rescue their family or their pets or get supplies from their house, or even letting people go and help other people? What was their excuse?
Well, one of 50 or 100, depending on which agent was standing at which road and which person they had some law enforcement with, if they had anybody there. Because you got to realize the law enforcement on the local side, on the sheriff's side and on the local police side, is so stretched thin. I mean, they're working like 58-hour shifts just to even keep up. So when you're on the local side, the sheriffs are even starting to move the FEMA guys out of the way and girls out of the way, because they're causing a disturbance that local law enforcement can't control anymore. It's way beyond control. And that, again, is like on the ground information that this is a powder keg here, that the sheriffs, for the safety of FEMA, is moving them off. And they've also backed down and been told to like get out of the hills and come back to parking lots in like Asheville and set up your little camper vans there and wait for people to come down to you. Because going up there to try to knock door to door. And another thing that was found out too was that there's like a FEMA order come up to your house and knock your door and go, all right, we saw you're completely damaged. We're so sorry. We really want to give you help. Sign here. We want you to look at your property. And when you get your property, then we're going to give you some money. Okay. And people are like, yes, we need the help. When you sign that first document, on the very, very little bottom, you need like it's like one font. You need like magnifying glass and then reading glasses to look through the magnifying glass. If you take that money, it's a loan. It's not relief money. And if you don't pay it back in 365 days, they have the right to confiscate your property. Now, this started to make a lot of waves here real instantly. Like people through the ham network were like, don't sign the documents. So when FEMA will come up and knock on the doors, they're like, get out of here. And they're like, no, we want to get out of here. You're on private land. Get off. You're trespassing, And then it started to come like this. So people, even at the doors, when they would knock, were like, you're trespassing, get off. And then they were encountering a huge amount of resistance from every way, shape, and form on the roads, at the doorstep, and everywhere in between. So they have pulled back out of anywhere going up into cities, neighborhoods, villages, towns, anything like. They're back into the main hubs, if you will, where like the rescue operation distributions are coming from. They've been forced out. Like they forced the federal government out of the mountains, literally again, right now, completely. They're pulled back to base of operation. Their fobs are right there. They got pulled back to the fob. That's as far as they're allowed to go anymore. And the sheriffs were very clean. We're going to arrest you if you try to go back up there again, because you're causing problems and the people aren't having it. You're going to get hurt. They're going to get in trouble. And we as the sheriffs are saying this needs to stop now. And remember, the sheriff has the highest law of the land. So sheriffs are up there threatening the FEMA with arrest, saying you need to get back down out of here. We as the local community will handle it, because you see all those guys over there in their truck. They're not having it anymore. And this is what's going on as of today and earlier yesterday. So there's been a massive standoff against federal forces in those mountains, just like we saw up at like Bundy Ranch. Like they stood them off and made them come back out. Now, what's going to go on from here is an unknown. Those people really need help. They need financial help. They need resource help. They don't have any medicines. They're running out. It's getting cold. They need heating oils. They need propane. They need medicines. They need clothing. They need an enormous amount of other things to help them get through if they're going to try to stay up there. Winter is here in the higher elevations. It's getting below freezing in the evenings now. So I don't know. I'm just going to stop there. I've said too much.
Was that contract that they were going to sign with FEMA, was that was for relief funds, right? And it was
Yes.
like $750. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. You know, because I don't like to say something unless I can double check it or prove it. But somebody actually had the contract, and it had made rounds everywhere. And I even talked to a couple people on the Ham network that I listen to, and I'm in contact with actually 2 of them that are running supplies up. And that is absolutely a stated fact. Once you read that very fine print on the bottom, so what they have to do, there's a standard procedure. First, they have to get your approval to survey the property. That's page 1. And when you sign that, that's where it says it's a loan, not a, relief effort just given by the government, federal, as like, take the money, hope you can do something with it. Page 2, after you go in and they do the survey and they say, sign this, there's nothing on there that says anything you have to pay it back. That's how they catch people. So page 1, when you give them the permission to look on your land, that's where the fine print is. Please be aware and share that with anybody you know. If they take the money, they have to pay it back. Don't tell them not to take the money. They could definitely use the money and use the help, but they have to pay it back. It's not a gift. If they don't pay it back, they relinquish their land. Much like student loans, if you don't pay those back, they can lien everything you own. But this whole specifics on it is, we take your property if you don't pay it back. Not that we can lien your wages for X amount of years if you don't pay it back. They're taking the land out of the people in North Carolina if they don't pay it back. Again, land grab. Yes, no, I don't know how you would phrase that. I mean, it's deceiving because they don't tell you when you sign it. That's another thing. They won't point to that and go, by the way, here's the magnifying glass, and put on reading glasses and look through the magnifying glass and read that one font point at the bottom. They won't do that.
For $750, that is a raw deal, bro. Like, at least make it 10 grand if you're going to take my land if I don't pay it back. Come on, FEMA, do better. Do better. You're going to take my land over $750, which I can't verify. I don't know if that's 100% true or not, but let's just say that it is true. That is wild. $750. If I don't pay it back to $750, they're going to come and take my land. That's probably worth, I don't know what land is really worth there, but a lot more than $750.
Super. No, everybody wanted to move the countryside, so the prices here went like a 5x on everything. If you were in the countryside and you were on some usable land, it was like a 5x for everybody, or the 3x at the minimum. Like, if you didn't get a double on your money, you got cheated. Like, it was at least a 3 to 5x on every piece of property out in the hills that people wanted to flee to. Farm, if you had pasture land, it went from like 2 to 10, 12 actually. Someplace 13. I've seen some estimations of 17,000 from 2,000 to 4,000 to 17,000. You know, that's like a 4x. But everything everywhere is like a 3 to 5. So if you doubled your money, you got cheated. Let's say that. It's expensive, and the property taxes are expensive. But North Carolina was like this lush jewel that everybody wanted to get to. And it is very expensive comparatively to a lot of places in NC there.
I read somewhere that during the hurricane that hit North Carolina, it also took out 3 dams. Is that correct in saying 3? Some people have said 1, some people said 2, some people have said 3. What number of dams got taken out from this hurricane as well, which probably was the result of a lot of the flooding that happened, not only with the rain, but on top of that, with the dams breaking, that's going to increase the flooding as well.
They overtopped and they broke on the sides, just like we saw at Oroville, like ripped off the side. None of them collapsed into total catastrophic failure. They all overtopped. Duke Energy released all of the floodgates as high as they could go, and then they overtopped, and they were a waterfall. And I'm not talking like 6 inches of water going over, like 5 feet of water pouring over uncontrolled. And obviously that's going to rip out the sides. So massive erosion damage off the sides of those. So if there's another storm that goes up there within the next 6 or 8 months, they're going to have another exact phenomenon like this happen, because there's just no way to, there was so much erosion out of the dam. The dam's down 15 feet or something off the side where the erosion came through uncontrolled. So the dam wall is still there at a certain height, but where it was eroded is off that side. That's land 10 feet lower in many a place. Nothing catastrophically failed. All the dams held, but they were overtopped and massive erosion on the sides of the dams. And again, in addition to having the full floodgates open and then the overtopping and then the overspilling where just water finds its way. And I will say the evacuation orders were far too late. By the time those people got the evacuation orders, a 30-foot wall of water was already coming down the river, and it was just far too late. Even, the stories of it are like people are in their house watching the water come up to their front porch, and they're like, we just got to get out of here ourselves. And then they could hear something finally coming over their radio as they were actually crawling out of their houses to get up the back of the mountain as they're watching their house float away in front of them. Finally, they could hear something coming through on the radio, like, go to higher ground, go to higher ground. Well, yeah, that system also needs to be revamped. The early warning system, just like, when we had the Boxing Day tsunami or the day after Christmas across anywhere where that big earthquake occurred in Thailand and that huge tsunami all across the Indian Ocean, like they really bumped up their early warning systems for tsunamis. Well, there has to be another bump up the early warning system for this type of mountain floods, because whatever they had just was way too late and not deliverable because so much infrastructure is already wiped out. Like there was no communication devices functioning at that time. By the time the word came, most people didn't even get it because there was no way for them to receive messages. Like the cell phone towers were already gone. And it was an archaic system built for something when it didn't really flood. Like very few people had flood insurance because like in a mountain area, generally the water just kind of runs off. You don't have quote unquote floods like you do down the basin of the Mississippi, where you might get a bunch of feet underwater, where your house might get submerged to the first floor. That just never happens in the mountains until this time. So most people didn't even have flood insurance, and that's a different animal than having homeowners insurance or fire insurance or this kind of earthquake damage insurance. Most people didn't have flood insurance because they never had to have it, because nobody ever thought there would be a flood at this magnitude. That, like, the understanding of a flood in a mountain is your river gets big and it just goes down and you're high enough off it and just things flow down river. Like there's no floods. Okay, you might get a flash flood for a minute, but generally it flows into the mountain gorge and then down, and it never really touches the houses. And if it is, it's like, just such a smidgen that it's just only the idiots would build near that close to a river or a gorge that you would get that type of water height. And I don't even think insurance company would insure you unless you're at the 500-foot level anyway. Or excuse me, 500-year flood levels. I know in Hawaii, my friend bought a house and they were near a creek going down. And he's like, I think it was 1,000-year flood level they had to build above. But anyway, there's definitely things you have to abide by getting insurance on the homes. 500-year or 1,000-year flood levels and above. So barely, I don't think, almost probably 1 or 2% maybe at maximum had flood insurance, because it's just not a thing in the mountains. Water goes down the hill. It doesn't flood your house. It goes down the hill. You might got a mudslide or something that knocked out part of a thing, but that would count as like a homeowner's insurance on a mudslide or something. But actual flood damage where your house is wiped away by a river, that counts as a flood. And barely anybody had those insurance on that, which is sad. They won't even be able to rebuild their homes with the money given. I think, I saw some estimates where they're saying, okay, if you had homeowners insurance and you didn't have the flood insurance with it, they might give you like maybe 10% of the value of the home. So you can't even rebuild there then. Yeah, you got the land, which is worth a lot, but homes that were $100,000 went to $500,000. So, I mean, you can't rebuild at today's prices. You just can't. You can't.
Yeah, speaking of response and recovery, a lot of people are pointing to this project Phoenix 2.0. Have you seen this?
I think I've heard of it. Yeah, there it is. That same one. That was for Tampa Bay. Yeah, it is Tampa Bay, right?
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of people post about it, and it's basically a simulation for a hurricane hitting Tampa and the response that would be issued, and sort of like an event 201 type of situation before COVID. But the problem is that this project Phoenix thing was developed in 2009. Right? This was developed in 2009 by Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, right? It's 15 years old. And it's a 4-tier training program for, local emergency responders and small business owners in Tampa Bay. And it deals with, the immediate response and then, short and long-term cleanup operations. It is a simulation of a Cat 5 hurricane type of worst case scenario hitting Tampa Bay, but Florida is a state that has been dealing with hurricanes for centuries now, and many people were relating this to Hurricane Milton, but it's no way, shape, or form related at all. It's 15 years old. It's not a drill to simulate a hurricane called Milton, and it certainly isn't a drill to simulate a Cat 5 hurricane, because that's what Milton turned out to be. It started at a Cat 5, and then when it made landfall, it turned into a Cat 3. And the worst that people got in Florida and southern Florida was some flooding and some damage, So some weather modification that was, right? And it's hurricane season, Hurricane season starts in June 1st of every single year, and it ends November 30th of every year. Now, if this had happened, let's say a hurricane just randomly hit North Carolina or hit Florida, let's say in March. Okay. Then you could say, yeah, that's pretty weird that it happened then, but it didn't. They both hit pretty much in the dead center of hurricane season. So, people are relating this whole Project Phoenix thing as being some kind of proof that these hurricanes were some kind of weather modification, geoengineering stuff, when that's not the case. And again, I'm not saying, like I said in the beginning of this, that doesn't mean that they don't have the technology to do it. But though some of the patents and a lot of the things that people are sharing online are fake patents or non-working patents, I do think that they have the technology to possibly create something, or at least maneuver it or do something along those lines, right? But this Project Phoenix thing is not any proof that it was some kind of modified event. It's so interesting, Dave, because when something happens all of a sudden, everyone on the internet appears to be experts on that topic, right? They magically know everything about it before anybody else knows anything about it, And for example, at the end of last year, everyone was expert forensic anthropologist with the Nazca mummies. Everyone knew everything about the Nazca mummies. And then they were experts in wildfire science. There were wildfire science experts with the Lahaina fires in Hawaii. And then everybody on the internet was all of a sudden ballistic experts with the attempted Trump assassination, which magically everyone has just quit talking about and don't talk about it and act like it didn't even happen anymore, which is really strange. And now apparently everyone has a degree in meteorology, right? And atmospheric scientists and geoengineering. You don't think that's strange, Dave? Where did everyone all of a sudden obtain all of these outstanding degrees in all of these areas of study?
It's unusual. Some of these patents are viable in a laboratory, but when you're trying to scale it to a hurricane that's absorbing heat from the sun at something like 1.7 quadrillion watts per second input into that system, for us as humans on this planet, I mean, even CERN uses far less power than that. So the idea that, using electromagnetic frequencies to steer something, for me, I just don't think the power input's there, because NextRad towers are, 0.75 megawatt, not even a full megawatt for each NextRad tower. So even if you're fired every single one up, you're only talking several hundred megawatts, and you're talking quadrillions of watts. And then bringing that down in, you're talking, hundreds of millions of megawatts if you want to divide by 1,000,000 to get that conversion. And you look at the power scales and it just could be, maybe not. But I do say that well-known science that has very big effect, that costs very little and can be dispersed over a wide area, is carbon black seeding or graphene particle seeding, electrostatic or superconductive graphene seeding on top of the hurricane. Like if they had multiple planes going over there, dispersing on a certain rate, but you're talking somewhere 60,000 foot in the atmosphere, above 70,000 foot to get that drift down on top of that storm system. These planes won't even be on radar. Unless, most of them would be ghost planes, but you'd have to have fleets of those. And the amount of carbon black coming out too. Now putting it on top of a storm system so the heating can create an upwelling on a certain quadrant of that storm, that's well-known science. You can do that. But the other thing that nobody talks about that has to be required is a high pressure blocking system to kind of lock that thing in and push it a certain direction. But again, to create a high pressure system that stays there for days or weeks on end in a certain area, oh my gosh. If you were going to do graphene seeding up there somewhere, carbon black dispersal, I would be raining black particles out of the sky, because that's about how long you would need to put it up there, as the dropout rate would start to match the dispersion rate after like 2 weeks, where you've seen all this black fine dust coming out covering everything. But there were no reports of that. So to be able to say that they've artificially created that high pressure system that locked that hurricane in place to make it track up this way, I mean, you would be seeing an enormous amount of black dust everywhere, all up and down the entire southeast U.S. None of that was reported. And even now, it should be coming down in rainfall, where we should be seeing like black soot rain everywhere. But it's just not being reported either. And even that long after the event, and the dispersion rate and gravity pulling something down out of the atmosphere, nobody's seeing that. So, for me, I'm like, to create a high pressure system, HARP's not going to work. It's like a little tiny beam in the ionosphere and it goes way up and it bends. And that's not going to work. Cloud seeding in terms of geoengineering and air, like nanoparticulate dispersal, that's to reflect sunlight. You need to heat an area to get it to create a high pressure system. And there's just no, coming out of a lab is one thing, but to put a high pressure system that covers half the United States, you know how much graphene that would require in the atmosphere, or carbon black? It's unthinkable, the amount. There would be thousands of planes spraying at 70,000 feet or 60,000 feet. I mean, somebody would notice that, and you would see the dropout of the particles too. But the sun would actually turn dimmer where they were doing that. And nobody reported. It's been crystal clear skies forever over an enormous amount of these places. If you're telling me you're going to see that much carbon black to create a high pressure and the sun didn't dim at all, that's really hard for me to believe, because visually, optically, you would see something, because they would need to put that much particulate up there to heat it, to get it to upwell, to create the high pressure system. Like if you just do, like you could do it in a lab. Yeah, I absolutely could. That's where a lot of these patents are made for. They're laboratory experiments that could be replicated in a laboratory, but on larger scales, in terms of continental scale, I just don't think we're there yet. It's wishful, and I really believe a lot of this might be psyopish, where they want you to believe they have this much control. But they're far from it, unless there's technologies out there that are unknown to us, that are 50, 500 years advanced from where we sit now. But then you're starting to talk about, Sumerian technologies that were brought through the collapses for the last, 7,000 years, that were those technologies to set up that advanced society at that time. Like, you really got to stretch to try to bring it into something that makes sense of this manipulation. I understand you can like seed part of it to make it collapse on itself and intensify. You could steer it to an extent, but to put a high blocking pressure system in place to make it run up a certain line, that's outside my concept to think that's possible right now. but perhaps I'm wrong. I'm always willing to learn and absorb new information. No pun intended with the heat absorption on the carbon black.
Yeah, again, guys, I'm not saying that patents don't exist. Some do, but just because a patent exists, which a lot of this came from Alex Jones. Alex Jones was on this. A lot of the conspiracy community just listens to Alex Jones in the morning and then goes out and parrots everything that he says later on that day, like verbatim, the same thing, and acts like it's their information. I'm not saying that patents don't exist, but just because they exist doesn't mean that they're actively being used. And that doesn't mean that this hurricane was some kind of weather modification thing. If you applied that logic to the CIA has a patent for a heart attack machine gun. Over 1,000 people die of heart attacks every single day. Is that all those people dying from the CIA heart attack patent machine gun? I don't think so. So you can't apply a logic because that there's patents for something that means that's proof and evidence that something that this hurricane is a manufactured hurricane. That's garbage, in my opinion. And it's getting to this point where this community, Dave, is just going to fucking implode upon itself. And excuse my language, but it's going to implode upon itself. And we're getting to that point right now, and I see it. I see it coming, and I'm trying to tell people, don't be saying things that before you have all the evidence for. Don't be saying things that you don't know anything about, because it's just adding to this echo chamber of garbage and nonsense.
And we pointed out 2 events that were echoey nonsense too. Since our shows, we've done shows together. We pointed out 2 of those that never manifested. Remember that?
I said a tsunami was going to hit California, and it didn't. But I still think something might be coming for California. California hasn't had anything wild and crazy happen to it for a really long time. Not a lot of damage. There hasn't been a lot of earthquakes that's created a lot of problems in California. So I think something is going to come for California. But yeah, I definitely, what did I say, within like a year or 2 years or something like that. But yeah, I was completely wrong, and I own that. 100% I was wrong on that. And but another thing that we talked about before the last time that you were on my show, that people are also applying to weather modification and HARP, is these auroras that are happening, that people are seeing further south than normal. But if you remember, Dave, the last time you were on 6 months ago, we talked about that exact same thing. The same thing was happening. People were seeing the aurora further south than they normally do. It's the exact same thing. And they did that same thing again in 2023. It's because of solar storms. The solar storms is pushing the aurora, the northern lights, further down south. And because HARP is like a very popular thing to talk about now it's just HARP. It's HARP. HARP is creating the simulation in the sky to show people in the south this aurora, the northern lights. They're magically seeing it because HARP is generating the northern lights. It's wild. When the exact same thing was happening 6 months ago, go back to the previous show, the very last show that me and David were on. We were talking about this. We talked about how people were seeing the northern lights pretty far south. And then if you type into Google other times that the northern lights has been seen further south, you'll see that it happened in 2023 as well.
Happens all the time. And to wind up here, a declining Earth's magnetic field and higher solar activity, those 2 things are going to push aurora further south. If we don't have the shield in front of the planet to stop those particles from running in and down the magnetic field lines, then what do you expect to happen? Of course, this is going to be a phenomenon too that's going to get far more intense. So if you think you're seeing some crazy stuff now, this is just the beginning of it. This is the beginning of the amplification phase of this cycle that we're going to work through. And again, I will say it clearly that all of the powers that be, quote unquote, understand this cycle has returned. Now, can every place on the planet be salvaged? Obviously not. They understand where the non-salvageable zones are, and they also understand where the areas that shall increase in bounty will be, like Sahara Desert now greening, the North African Sahel, but a lot of areas 45 north and above to the pole, and then 45 south to the South Pole. Crop production is going to go to nearly zero in these areas, so you're going to have to set up a new crop growing area. And why would you not build it where the above ground water rainfall is increasing from the West African monsoon all the way across Africa in the north? And then you could tap all those aquifers from beneath, like Gaddafi did, and then Nubian sandstone aquifers, Sus aquifers, like million square kilometers of water under there in the aquifers that hasn't been tapped yet. And that's probably very low estimate in terms of, because you got to think there were like 30,000 cubic kilometers just in that Nubian sandstone aquifer alone that hadn't been fully mapped yet. And then the Sus aquifer, you're looking at another 30,000 square kilometers. You're already, and then areas through Egypt, and you don't even get down into the largest of the aquifer. Nubian sandstone aquifer and Sus, those are small ones compared to what's in Central Africa under Chad. And those are African megalakes that used to be there. Drainage bases of African megalakes, way bigger than our Great Lakes. So imagine kind of the porosity in sandstone absorbing all that water. What's there? So what we see, this Earth's magnetic field decline. Okay, solar aurora, they're going to be far more larger solar storms from this point. You're going to see way more aurora. You're going to watch our crops go offline more and more, and your food prices are going to rise. You're going to watch a huge amount of investment pour into Africa to set up a new food growing area. That's kind of the world we're going to move into. But now the control mechanism will be there too, every step of the way. So get used to that, and you can kind of pre-plan. You can sort of look around the curve or a little bit on this. But I'm sure not moving to Africa right now to try to like be in the middle of the zone. It's not that ready yet, but it is going that direction.
They're going to send money to set up agriculture in Africa because it's going to become a green zone. It's going to be lush.
Oh, it already is becoming lush. Yeah, the 4,000-year return on that is starting as we speak. And if you look back at maps as early as, like, say, 1300 or even into the late 1400s, they show a lot of what would be forest areas along in what is now desert. So these flips from desert to forest, forest to desert occur far faster than anybody thinks. It doesn't take 6,000 years for it to come back to forest. It'll take a couple hundred max. And if you can already know where the precipitation's falling, there's a huge amount. This one, there was this, okay, so everybody looked at, if you go to sot.net and you scroll down into their Earth Changes section, Morocco had a huge, massive amount of rain come down. And just in one night, the water had pooled in and created a 7-mile long by 3-mile wide lake in one evening. But this was the base of an African megalake. This was the base of one of the smaller megalakes at the same drainage basin where, well, again, people had villages and towns. And if you're wondering why they're flooding, because they followed the drying out lake beds in and in and in to its lowest point. And now the cycle is flipped, and now the rains are coming again, so it's going to expand out and out and out. So all these cities and villages and towns that are all along these lake beds are just going to get flooded from this point. I mean, if I was there, I'd be like, we're moving way hella up, way away from here, because it's going to keep refilling from this point for the next how many centuries? We're at the end of the cycle. See, that's the whole point. We flipped over, and everybody understands this. We flipped on the cycle. Hydrological cycles changing across the planet. Some places are going to become really dry. Like the African Sahel area is becoming incredibly wet, but the Amazon's becoming incredibly dry. And if you go back, there's a bunch of peer-reviewed studies that show there is a relationship between the greening of the desert and the drying of the Amazon. Back and forth on 6,000-year cycles. So I'm going, this is starting to play out again. Africa's getting dry. Sahara's getting wet. So at least we have some correlation of that actually manifesting right this second. Do the math. Our present economy can't stay together because it was all built on the prior world. So we're just going to flip into a new world based on cryptocurrencies, more control, track and trace, digital IDs, all this stuff moving forward. And it literally is the new world. And I'm just trying to figure out how to navigate through it, So I appreciate you having me on, but any last thoughts on that? I would love to hear it.
I think that is, I think that the thing is how they're going to do the things that you said. That's the real question, is how. Like, yeah, we can talk about that these things are coming, but it's always something that nobody really expects. Like people can throw out theories and ideas of how they might implement some of this stuff into this new world, but it never goes down the way that people think that it's going to go down. It's always, there's a curveball that's always thrown in there. And Dave, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate you a lot. Let the audience know where they can find you, and tell them about your new website that you got up as well.
Oh, the Civilization Cycle Podcast. We're firing while we're going civilizationcyclepodcast.com. Check it out there. Put your email in. We'll get you the show notes on every single week that we talk live Thursday nights, 10 p.m. to midnight on Revolution Radio. Streaming through Rumble is our main point out on that, and the Adapt 2030 channel. So we continue to, along with Ransom, try to bring you the information on a weekly, as well as the video updates I try to do pretty much every day, every other day. But it's all about getting the information out so we can come to solutions together and understand, like you said, it's a curve. Things are always constantly in motion. It's never going to be straight from point A to point B. So by putting the information out, at least we can try to come to some solutions together here on, it might not be 100% the way it goes, but what if it's 80% correct and the other 20% needs to be navigated day by day? At least you kind of get the general trend of where it's going, not the exact play-by-play, but the trend.
Absolutely. I agree. I'll get that website in the description of this video. Thanks so much for coming on, Dave. Really appreciate it. It's always wonderful talking with you. Thanks everyone in the chat. Appreciate each and every one of you contributing to the conversation. Good to see everybody in there, the moderators and the channel members. Thanks for being here. Please be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help the channel and the algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications, and the links to David's information will be in the description of this video. Thank you guys very much. See you all next time.